Hey guys, it's Quinn here, and I'm gonna be reading another book, which is On My Honor. So, I know I'm supposed to be making videos today, but I was so busy at school, so I'm gonna try to make this one today. So, here it is, a new book, On My Honor. So, let's get started reading. So, this is the introduction on My Honor. Chapter 1. Climb the Starved Rock Bluffs. You gotta be kidding. Joel's spine tingled at the mere thought of trying to scale the sheer river bluffs in a state park. He looked Tony square in the eye. Somebody got killed last year trying to do that, don't you remember? Tony Struggle popped a wheelie on his battered BMX. A BMX is a bike, so yeah, spun in place. Nobody knows if that guy was really trying to climb the bluffs. He might have fallen off the top, or even jumped. Joe bent over his squin 10 speed and brushed imaginary dust of the thunder. Well, I'm not going to ride out here with you. If that what you're going to do, it's dumb. He tried to sound tough, sure of himself. Maybe for once, he will be able to talk Tony out one of his crazy out of his ideas. You don't have to climb if you're scared, Bates. That is Tony's last name, Bates. Tony said, "Who's scared?" Joe licked his lips, which seemed to have gone dry. I just rather go swimming, that's all. It's going to be a torture today, or we could work on our treehouse. My dad got us some more wood. We can do this later. We can do the treehouse later, Tony said, after we get back. And I don't feel like swimming. You never feel like swimming, Joe muttered, seeing in his mind the shining blue water, a municipal pool. The truth was, Tony rarely felt like doing anything that Joel wanted to do. Joel wondered, sometimes why they stayed friends. There had to be something more than there had been born across the street for each other 12 years ago. Their birthdays less than a week apart. Mr. Zbrinsky, Tony's mother, started babysitting Joel after his mother went back to work when he was 6 months old. So he and Tony had spent their baby years drilling on the same toys. Now Joel just checked in with her during the day, let her know where he was going, things like that. But he didn't know what kept him and Tony together, except that after Tony, other kids said boring. Come on, Joel, Tony said. Run out of the park with me. Today and tomorrow I'll go swimming with you. Joel thought of the long, curving, watery slide at the pool. He sighed. Tomorrow it would probably rain, or Tony would have some other plan. As crazy as this one. He'll pretend he has forgotten he promised to go to the pool. Joel resettled his lunch in the saddlebag behind his bicycle seat. It wasn't much fun to go swimming alone, but still it would be better than getting killed on the park bluffs. There were signs all over warning people to stay on the paths, and Tony wanted to climb from the riverside. No less. The front door of Joel's house opened, and his father came out with Bobby. Joel's 4-year-old brother, Mrs. Zabriskie, was Bobby's babysitter now. And their father was always the one who gives Bobby's breakfast, taken to the Zabriskie's house, because their mother has to leave for work earlier than he. Seeing his father in the firm grip he maintained on Bobby's hand gave Joel an idea. He would ask for permission to ride his bike out of a starved rock. He wouldn't mention about the bluffs. Of course he wouldn't have to. His father was sure to say that his ride in the park was too far, too dangerous. His dad was always worried about things like that. Tony would be mad that he had asked, that they were supposed to ask, after all. At least Tony would be able to say that Joel had to stay home because he was chicken. That's funny. "Hi, Dad," Joe called. This was going to be easy. "Can I bike out to Starved Rock with Tony?" He turned his back slightly to his Tony, avoid seeing what he knew would be a dirty look. His father stopped and squinted against the morning sun, and had just risen about the houses across the street, all the way out of his state park. He repeated as though they were some other state park in Illinois. "Yeah," Joel said, "it's not so far, probably only 10 or 12 miles. More like 8 or 9, I think," his father said, approaching with Bobby and Tal. "But it's still a long ride." "I want to go too," Bobby announced. "I want to go to the park." "Can I, Daddy? Can I, Joel?" His voice reminded Joel of the hovering whine of a mosquito. Their mother said whining was a stage all 4-year-olds went through. Joel thought a year was a long stage. "It's a hot day," his father continued, ignoring Bobby's plea. And the road is awfully narrow, and hilly and winding too. "Sorry, my camera's blurry. I don't know why." "Can I, Daddy?" Bobby's voice rose in volume and pitch. "Can I go with Joel?" "No." Their father shook his head. "I'm not even sure these two are going anywhere. Now you run across the Zabrinskis. But be careful, Bobby. Watch for cars." There were almost no cars to watch for on their quiet street. But their fathers always said things like that anyway. Bobby went, its lower whip sticking out of like a shelf. "Well, be careful, Dad." Joe could wear a whine in his own voice. He sounded almost bad as Bobby. He sounded as if he really wanted to go. "We will," Mr. Bates honest. So I pleaded, but Doiny bleated, "The park's not that far, and there's not much traffic during the week." Joel's father ran his fingers in through his hair, leaving it standing on end. "I know the traffic is sparse, but with all those hills, it'll seem to like go a lot farther. If we get tired, we'll just turn back," Tony said. Why does my camera get all blurry? See? My camera's still blurry. I don't have time for this. Joe didn't say anything more to win his argument would be to lose. He wasn't sure, though, his father was going to give him permission. His father surveyed their bikes, frowning slightly. Joel wondered if he was going to ask why Tony was carrying rope looped over his handlebars to tie ourselves together when he climbed. Tony had announced, but Joel's father merely said, "You have lunches packed already?" "Sure," Tony answered, patting the lunch he tied his handlebars with the rope. Joel's father turned back to him. "You know you have your paper route to do this afternoon, Joel." Joel nodded. He knew maybe that he would be an excuse. What if you boys got too tired to ride back? Tony's mother does not have a car. "I don't want anybody to leave the work to come after you." Tony was looking for Joel, obviously waiting for him to play out his side of the argument. "He won't get tired," Joel said automatically. His father's eyes seemed to know better, but he turned around to Tony and asked, "Does your mother know what you're planning to do?" "Sure," Tony answered cheerfully. And Joel knew, without even checking Tony's face, that he was lying. He never told his mother anything if he could help it. And she was so busy with widower kids that she didn't ask many questions. His father merely accepted Tony's word with a nod, ground ups. Could be real dense sometimes, and he almost redeemed himself by just suggesting, "How about trying the country roads if it go into the town the other way? It's flat and will be easier riding. If it doesn't go anywhere," Tony complained. "Besides, it's boring, nothing but cornfields on every side." "No bus declined," Joel added silently. Joel's father sighed, but buttoned his suit jacket and buttoned it again. The sigh gave Joel's stomach a small twist. His father wasn't actually considering giving permission, wasn't he? Tony's father would have answered in a second when he would have said no. What do you think, son? His father asked. Do you think you can make it all the way to the park back without any trouble? Joel could feel Tony watching him, waiting. Sure, he said. Through his throat, he started to tighten around the word. It'll be a kinch or cinch. How do you say it? Joel's father shook his head. I doubt that. I guess it would have hurt you boys to be good and tired tonight. Now I can see better. Joel's knees went watery. His father was going to say they could go. Little muscles in our legs, Tony announced, jubilant. Joel's father didn't take his eyes out of Joel's face. On your honor? He said. On my honor, honestly. You'll watch for traffic? You won't go anywhere except the park? You'll be careful the whole way. On my honor. Joel repeated as he crossed his heart solemnly, then raised his right hand to himself. He added, the only thing I'd tell you is get killed by the bluffs, and I'll serve you right. His father looked at him for a long moment. He nodded his head. Okay, he said. I guess you're old enough now for a jaunt like this. But putter there, man, Tony exclaimed, holding a grubby palm toward Joel. Then he added, I'll give his dibs on a squin. Joel gave Tony 5, taking his friend's face, and he did. Tony's dark eyes were bright and with laughter, with fun, and he was grinning. He was like a circus clown. Joel shook his head. How can you get the dibs on my bike? He asked. But he knew how when he were Tony. The outrageous seemed natural. His father was still watching him, so Joel added automatically, thanks, Dad. He tried to sound as though he really glad. He even forced a smile, though his mouth felt stiff. Thanks a lot. His father nodded again. His father remaining serious. Remember, son, he said one last time, you're on your honor. Sure, Joe replied. The least his father could have done was to remind them about staying off the bluffs. I know. Chapter 2. Joel watched his father drive away. He felt betrayed, trapped. How could he explain to Tony that had been kidding? That he never had any intention of going on with him at the park once the idea of climbing the bluffs had come up. Can I ride your bike, Joel? Tony begged. Can I? Huh? Joel sighed. Tony was like a kid expecting Christmas, not someone about to risk his life. Just for a ride out, he said. When they came back, if they came back, he knew he would be glad for years to the squint to make it ride easier. Tony's bike was a hand-me-down that he belonged to the 3 older brothers before he came to own to be his. There was no way, no fenders, no handle grips, only a few bullets left on the original red plank. It was a perfect for wheelies, though, and for going off ramps. Joel's silver 10-speed could be ridden fast or it could be ridden slowly, but it wasn't good for anything else. Joel reached over to take hold of Tony's bike, supporting his own for Tony at the same time. Come on, he said, let's go. It took only about 10 minutes for reach to the edge of the town. Only their way past the school, Tony stuck out his tongue in his direction of the 6th grade classroom, where they had spent last year. Joel decided he might as well take the threat out of the day. Followed suit. Thought he liked the school well enough. The sun sizzled in the sky, so blue it could be been created out of the paint can. When they left out with the town behind, they rode between the stands of the tall, whispering grass rising on each side of the highway. Metalworks called to the ditch banks. Tony's experience knew no bounds. He rode in figure eights or in the circles that accompanied both lanes of the nearly deserted highway. Once he tried to square and nearly topped off of Joel's bike. Joel moved ahead when he started down the hill into the Vermilion River Valley. He leaned forward and pumped, pushing Tony's old bike until it hummed. This was the first of many valleys they could encounter, and Joel knew going up the other side would be tough. Maybe he thought with a sudden rush of hope when Tony would get tired before they got all the way to the park. If you guys don't know what Vermilion River Valley is, go search it up somewhere. Thank you. Soon the bike was going faster than he could pump, so he had to let it coast. Still at gathered speed, he tried once to glance over his shoulder to see how close behind Tony was following. His front wheel wobbled dangerously when he turned his head, so he kept his eyes forward, concentrating on keeping the wheel still. His tires buzzed against the smooth blacktop. Then the wind sucked through his hair, holding it back through his face by strong fingers. It forced his eyelids open and made his eyes feel dry and cracky. By the time Joel got to the bridge, the wheel was pulling between the two hills he would be flying. With the speed he had built up, he figured to get to halfway up the other side before he had to get off a push. Joe reached the bottom of the hill. He shot across the bridge so fast he didn't get even a glimpse of the river below. He knew exactly how it would look, though muddy red with the lazy, oily looking swirls. As the bike's momentum slowed enough that his legs could keep it pace with the spinning wheels, he started pumping, measuring with distance of the upward side. Standing with them, but pumping again to get harder so he could force each pedal down with all his weight. When his legs began to feel rubbery, he climbed up and started pushing. Tony would probably pass him, still running to squint. That was some hill, huh? He tossed words over his shoulder, getting no answer. He turned his around and see where Tony was. Tony was at the bottom of the hill in the middle of a bridge. Squint whizzing carelessly against a fat iron wing. He was hanging a long way over a river railing, peering down the river. Bummer. Joel sitting glancing up and down the highway to check for cars. Even when he was mad at his father, he couldn't help his doing things like that. He U-turned, climbed back onto the beginning coast again. Next time he'll get stopped in a only fee trying to get to the dead stop at the bottom. Then he would have left an entire hill, but of course Tony didn't think like that. Maybe it was the time they traded the bikes back again. What are you looking at? He asked, as he popped the wheelie and he spun next to Tony. The river, the old Tony replied, leaning out even farther. I'm looking at the Old Man River. No, you're not. Old Man River is in Mississippi. That's nothing but Vermilion down there. Tony didn't answer. Joe knew his correction didn't matter to Tony, but if he wanted to call them Vermilion Old Man River, he was that way in school too, even on test. Even drove the teachers nuts. Looking at Tony's leaning over the railing, some kind of acrobat and trapeze, Joel suddenly had to turn away. He wished Tony would be more careful. Beyond all reason, he also wished as he often had before, that Tony were his brother. They could be twins, that kind that didn't have to look alike or be alike either. With so many other kids in the family, the Zabrinskis would miss Tony if they needed a replacement. Joe would gladly trade Bobby the winner. You realize Joel said that it's going to be a long walk up that hill. Tony straightened up to grin his teeth against his already tanned skin. We don't have to go to the Starved Rock, he said. Maybe I got a better idea. Better than Starved Rock. Was there a chance he wasn't going to argue with Tony about declining the lefts? Tony did a little jig next to the bridge railing as he could explain himself that way. We got lots of time. We can do whatever we want. Sure we can. Joy agreed enthusiastically. I can't say it. I'm sorry. We can even go swimming. Joe couldn't believe his luck. All right, he explained, holding out of the flat of his palm for Tony to slap. Tony ignored the gesture, instead bowled. extending a hand in a direction of the reddish-brown water slithering far beneath the bridge. "It's a great day for swimming," he said. Joel stared in the river. He demanded, "Want to go swimming in the river?" Tony shrugged, elbow lightly. "We're us. You might as well go swimming in your toilet." That's funny. "Who says?" "My dad says." "That's who?" "My dad says." Tony mimicked. His voice might coming out high and girlish. Funny. Joel decided to ignore the taunt. He decided also not to be reminded of Tony's promise that he'd been required to make his father before they left. We're not allowed to swim in the Vermilion. Nobody is. It's dangerous. Sinkholes and currents and whirlpools sometimes, besides being dirty. Alligators too, I bet. Tony was certainly solemn, though his eyes still danced. The red in the water probably come from all bloody pieces of swimmers and gators lying around. There's no alligators in Vermilion. You think I'm stupid or something? Joel could feel his face growing hot. But despite the fact he knew Tony was only teasing, and the color just comes for Quay, red eyes in the water. "That does it," Tony said, crossing his arms, pulling his teacher over his head. "If there's no gators on no blood, I'm going to swim for sure." Leaving Joel's squint, still perched haphazardly against the railing, he went whipping the bridge and crashed through the underbrush along the side of the road. He was slinging his pale blue shirt over his head like a lasso. "Come on, Joel," he yelled back. The last one and two told. Sloth. Chapter 3. Joel watched Tony yelling and flailing his arms and reeds rain down the step of the hill river. He shook his head, that patch of shiny green leaves. Halfway down, Tony was romping through was probably poison ivy. He gleaned over at his bike. Tony had even bothered to hide it in his leads along the side of the road. Joel propped Tony's old bike against the railing and wheeled his own off the bridge, weighing it gently in the leads beneath the structure he considered for a moment, leaning Tony's bike right where Tony had left his, out of his open where anybody could steal it. He didn't vote if Tony's bike got stolen, he might never get another. Swimming in the Vermilion. Of all the crazy ideas, maybe even crazier than climbing the cliffs. Joe shook his head as he laid Tony's bike next to his own, then he started down the hill. "You see what I mean." Joe said he arrived next to Tony's own on the river bank. "It's really dirty, and one of the worst stuff chemicals or sewage you can't even see." Tony ignored him, stripping off the jeans and his underwear. He had already dropped his shirt and kicked his sneakers off before Joe arrived. "It's wet, isn't it?" he asked. Like I said, Joe replied, "So's your toilet." This book is so funny, I can't stop laughing. My god. Tony stepped at his river's edge, and the dirty water lapped over his feet, made his rear entirely, and he turned back to his Joe and grinned. "Not enough water in my toilet." "I tried it once to see, but you would." Joel replied. He wanted to sound grumpy, but he could feel the answering smile break through. "You coming in?" Joel called back when the water swirled around his knees. "I'm waiting for you to drown," Joel answered. "I just wanted to see so I can tell your folks." "Keep them for worrying," Tony tossed back. "Keep your mom for waiting supper," Joe replied. They both laughed then when the laughter had faded when Tony said, "Well, are you coming in, or are you just going to stand there and gawk?" If you guys don't know what gawking is, it's not an animal. Do not say it's an animal, because it's not like an animal. It's not what animals do. It's something else. Who's gawking? Joe pushed one sneaker off with a toe for the other. You're nothing to look at. Gawking is not a screaming thing. Do not say it's screaming. Do not say it. Swear. The water was just right, cool enough to raise goo flesh. At first, but not cold enough to be mumbling. The float past Joel's legs felt as a refreshing message, but he hasn't realized through that his current was so strong, he seemed through the water was barely moving when he looked down at the front of the bridge. Watch out for the current, he called for Tony, standing several feet upriver for him. Ah! Tony cried and grabbed himself by the throat with both hands. The current, it got me. It's gonna stuck me under. It's going to swallow me up. And he toddled over backward, howling. Its sadness disappeared beneath the foaming water he churned up. Joel stood where he was, waiting. When Tony stood up, he was Furtisteric monster emerging from swamp. Joel could tell that was a way by the way he stood, water streaming down his face, arms hanging low. He had launched forward. Come on, Joel said. If you're going to swim, let's go back to the pool. It'll be there. Tony fingered up. Why? This is fun. But there's a sliding board at the pool, and there are other kids too. Who needs a sliding board? Or other kids, Tony replied. Besides, I'm swimming now. As he plunged into the water face for the first time, but trashing just as much as before. Doesn't it look like he even knows how? Joey muttered himself, but he was wiped away. The idea seemed disloyal. Tony went to the pool and with them now and then. He did the same things that everybody else did. They spent most of their time going down to the slide into the shallow water or splashing one another. Joel eased himself deeply in the water and dog paddled a few strokes. He didn't want to put his face down to swim properly. He had artificial blue of the pool in the sting and chlorine any day. The river smelled of canned fish. Maybe we ought to come down here every day, work out. We gotta be on a swim team next year in junior high. Tony was saying. Joel stopped trying to swim and stood up. We caught for swimming for sure if we started to come down here every day. Who's to see us? Tony asked. I don't know, but somebody would. Somebody driving over to the bridge, probably. Joel looked up toward the highway bridge. There was no cars in sight. Tony shook his head. Sometimes, mates, you sound just like a 4-year-old man. Just like your old man. Mistake. Joey could feel the head flooding his face. What's wrong with that? Be careful with that tree, son. Joey mitigated. You might get hurt. Watch Bobby when he crosses the street. There's drivers never pay any. Joel had been moving closer to Tony as he spoke, but now he gave him the hard shove. Tony was expecting it, though when he didn't step backward, then he countered with a push his own. Joe swung his arms to keep his balance. He felt the bubble of his anger has been dealing with him. Of all morning to expand his chest, where did Tony had to make this fun his father? At least my dad doesn't go around hitting kids with a belt. He said, stepping closer to Tony and collecting his fists. Tony went white about his mouth. Joel was instantly sorry about his picking on Tony's father. He didn't know anything about Mr. Sabrinsky have really hit Tony with the belt anyway. He had only seen him take overs after Tony's once. Sneaking his belt over through the lips with one hand and holding his pants up with the other. Actually, Joe had thought it was kind of funny, but all the time in a scary sort of way. Tony took a wide swing of the side of Joel's head. Joel ducked in it easily. Tony was bigger and heavier than he was, but he was slower too. For a moment, he stood glaring at one another, breathing hard, their fists raised. Then Tony turned and began to slog through the water toward the riverbank. Where are you going? Joe asked. To Starved Rock, came the reply. I'm going to cry the blood by myself. Joe's heart sank. He didn't especially want to bike back to town alone, and he certainly didn't want Tony climbing the bluffs by himself. Oh, come on, Tony, he pleaded. We can stay here. This is fun, like swimming in your toilet. Tony replied without looking back. Joel answered with the first thing that popped through his head. Toilets aren't so bad. And to help show Tony that he meant it, he plugged into the water, immersing his face and taking several strokes that he stowed it was in front of Tony again. Tony grunted. You still look pretty mad. You're just saying that he's because you're scared to climb the bluffs. Again, the oration flared. Who's scared? Joel demanded. You're the one who's scared. Why? I bet you wouldn't even. He hesitated, looking around for something to challenge Tony with, something he wouldn't mind doing himself. Something to that sandbar out there. He indicated a thin, dark island of sand rising up the river, shut up about 100 feet from where they stood. Tony narrowed his eyes, gazed in the direction Joel pointed. Sorry. What if the hiccups are why? I would not climb something like that because I hate heights. Why should I be scared of that? He asked scornfully. I bet the river doesn't get deeper than its whole way. The water divided at the Tony's waist in this sharp V. I'll bet it's deeper than it's washed up places. Joel said river bottoms change. That's one of reasons they're so dangerous. I wouldn't be scared even if it was 10 foot deep. Joel stepped closer. You're willing to swim it then? Tony's chin shot up. Sure, unless you chicken to swim it too. We'll see who's chicken, Joel said. Okay, I'm gonna stop right here and I'll finish more tomorrow, so I'll see you guys later. Peace.